What's up guys, this is Voxide, and in this tutorial I'm gonna walk you through the entire process of creating an advanced intro using Cinema 4D and After Effects. I'm gonna be covering a lot of different modeling techniques and concept and visualization for Cinema 4D. And then we're gonna take our render from Cinema 4D and import it into After Effects and go over some general compositing tips, how to create some HUD elements, and hopefully by the end of this two-part tutorial series you're gonna have a good grasp on how you can create an intro by integrating Cinema 4D renders in After Effects. So the first part will cover modeling. As you can see here, I already have the scene modeled, but I'm gonna start over from scratch and walk you through the whole process. So I will create a new scene here, and I will press Ctrl B on my keyboard, and I'm gonna change the width and height to Full HD. And I already have the grid turned off, so you can go to Filter, Grid, and turn it off. And before I add any objects to the scene and actually start modeling, I'm gonna hop over Photoshop for a bit and talk a bit about concept and sketching out your ideas. So as you can see, this is the look I'm gonna go for. And you can see here it's not really a professional drawing or sketch by any means, but having this image now as a reference, it will help me a lot in actually modeling the scene inside Cinema 4D. So I really recommend you get in the habit, if you're not already doing it, so I really recommend getting in the habit of actually drawing out your scenes before actually hopping inside Cinema 4D and starting from scratch. So it's really important that you have a basic idea, you lay it out on a paper. You don't really need Photoshop or any advanced drawing skills. You can just pick up a piece of paper and just try to roughly shape out your idea and just pretty much the main objects and how the scene will sort of look overall. As you can see here, I'm not really focused on straight lines or amazing detail or shading. It's something very crude, very basic and primitive, but it helps a lot in the long run. When I first started modeling inside Cinema 4D, oftentimes I would just step inside Cinema 4D and I would like add a cube or something, add a plane, and then I would be stuck looking at this viewport for 2 hours, not knowing what to do, where to start. So it's a lot easier to just pick up a paper and start drawing, because for example, if I do something to this scene, whatever I do, it takes a lot more steps to actually create this in 3D than just drawing. So if you're not already doing this, you should really get into the habit of laying out your ideas on a piece of paper, especially when it comes to Cinema 4D modeling. When it comes to just using After Effects to create an intro, oftentimes you don't really need to sketch out your idea or anything, because you're pretty much limited in 2D space for After Effects in most cases. But when it comes to actually creating a scene and giving it a realistic feel and setting up your logo inside an actual space, it's really important to actually try to put your idea on a paper before stepping inside Cinema 4D, just because this will save you a lot of time in the long run by not having to go back and rechange, remodel and redesign certain elements because they don't fit the overall look and feel you want. So yeah, this will be my reference image, and let's get started. Let's hop inside Cinema 4D and see how we can start modeling this. So here I am inside Cinema 4D, and before I add any object, I just want to let you know that my point mode, edge and polygon mode are all linked to hotkeys. So I'm using 1 on my keyboard to switch between edges, polygon and point mode. So 1, 2, 3, as you can see. So I will be using this quite a lot because it's a lot easier and faster this way. And also 4 will be my object mode. And I may be going a little bit fast during this tutorial, so if you're a complete beginner to Cinema 4D, you should really watch some basic modeling tutorials first. So what I'm gonna do, I'm pretty much gonna try to work at my usual speed and just explain everything I'm doing as I work. So that's gonna be the workflow, and hopefully it won't be too fast. You can let me know in the comments if you think I was going too fast, and I will try to slow down in the next tutorial. But I think it will be fine, so let's get started. I'm gonna go ahead and start with a disk. So this will be my starting point. And one other thing, I really only need to model only this. Wait, let me make a new layer first. So I only really need to model this part right here, because everything else, so As you can see, this area right here, this is actually everything I have to model, because this will mirror over on this side and then this side and so on. So I really need to model this small portion, and let's go back inside Cinema 4D. So I want to use a lot more segments for this, and 72 segments should be fine. And I don't need any of these segments, so I'll set this to 1, and I will press C on my keyboard, make this editable, and I will turn on my grid back for a second, and I will go in my polygon mode, and I will select, let me switch to my live selection tool, and I will select these polygons that I want to keep on this side, and if I press V, go to select, inverse selection, I can then delete the rest of the polygons, and also go back in my point mode and Control A, hit optimize to get rid of the unused points. And I will put this disk now into a null. So with the disk selected, I can hold Alt and G, and this will place it inside a null. And I will name this group, just to be easier to follow. And I will go ahead and add a symmetry object, and I will place the group inside the symmetry object, all right? I want the symmetry to be mirrored over on this side to sort of complete like a quarter of our objects. So with my symmetry object selected, I can enable axis, and if I press R for my rotation tool, I can then shift and drag this over, and I actually need a value of 45, so I will just type it here, 45. And now you can see I've successfully created a quarter, and I will use this part to mirror over on this side and then this side and complete the whole object, all right? And let's take a look at my object over here, and I think I can delete this polygon as well. So there was another polygon left. As you can see, if I delete this one, then we're kind of losing our geometry. So that was the only polygon that was left to delete. All right, and let's make sure that our points are optimized. All right, and now I can mirror it over to the other parts. So with my symmetry object selected, I can go ahead and select my symmetry object, and if I hold Alt while selecting the new symmetry object, you can see it places the old symmetry object inside the new one, and I can change the mirror plane for this to be X and Y, and also I will enable axis and move this over to the side, and also use a value of 90 degrees here, just so it's mirrored perfectly, and then do the same thing again, add another symmetry, so you can see this is the hierarchy, and it's already mirrored perfectly because the mirror plane was fine as default. Alright, so this is my starting point, and you can see now if I grab any point in the original mesh, everything is getting mirrored over, and this will be our workflow. Alright, so let's take a look inside our reference and let's get started. So first of all, let's take care of this platform over here. So we can select the edges on the border here, and if I go to the first edge and double click, you can see this selects all of my edges. And I want to sort of extrude this outwards like this, but you can see it doesn't really affect the scale as well. So what I can do actually is if I enable axis and set the X, Y and Z values to 0, and now disable axis and switch to my scale tool. Now you can see if I hold Control and scale this on the X and Z axis, you can see this extrudes it perfectly outwards and uniformly. And now I can switch to my move tool and move this down a bit, and we're sort of creating the ramp. And I can go back inside my reference and see if I'm matching the proportions, and this looks to be fine. Alright, so now I will make another extrusion that goes all the way over to this side over here. So I can cut this area afterwards, and let's take care of this outer extrusion. Let's go back inside Cinema 4D, press T for scale and hold Control while scaling this up. And I'm trying to match the area of our object. So I'm looking at the proportion between this area and the platform, and I think this will be fine. And now I can go ahead and press K for my knife tool, select the mode to loop, and I can add a loop maybe over to this side. Alright, and now if I switch to my polygon mode and press space to select my live selection tool, and I will grab these polygons over here, and I can just delete these and optimize my points. Let's check out our reference. And let's try to add sort of like these bevels on the corner here. And I can do this if I create another edge loop over to the side. And I will select this edge and press B and mirror it, bridge it over to this other edge. And this will take care of that. And for this other corner, I can select the point and press MS for bevel. And then I can just drag it over and sort of create this nice bevel over here. All right. And I will undo this actually because I think I need these edges to be a little further apart from the rest of the mesh. So I can do the same things while having the edges selected. I can zero out our position. Just be sure that enable axis is enabled. And now if I disable this and scale this up, you can see I can push the edges further apart. So now I can redo the bevel, select your point, MS for bevel, and just bevel this out. Alright, and I can see there's a hole here where the lights will be. So for this I will just press my K tool for knife, and somewhere around this place should be fine. And now if I grab all of these polygons, I can hold down Control and move this down below, and this will extrude it inwards. And I will get rid of these side polygons and make sure the mesh is optimized. And I will actually grab these polygons again, and I will press UP on my keyboard, and this will detach the objects from the original mesh. And now I can delete them, and I will make a new material and place it for our detached objects and make this sort of like a blue. Just this will just help visualize our lights better. So as you can see, and I will get rid of the grid. So now we're starting to get close to our reference. And here you can see inside the reference that the mesh is sort of broken up into tinier objects. And let's see if we can try to recreate these edges that are sort of breaking up the patterns, alright? So let's head back inside Cinema 4D and grab our original mesh. And I know I need an edge over on this side, so I'll press K. So I can add an edge loop maybe around this place. And let's take a look. And we will need another edge over here. And if I switch the mode now to line, I can then connect these 2 points. And if I grab these edges on this side and this side, now I can right click, dissolve, and now I'm left with just this edge. Alright, so now I can select all of the edges that are sort of disconnecting our mesh. So I know I want this edge over here, and this edge over here, and this other edge. And I will deselect this guy over here. So these are the edges that are breaking up our pattern. And now I can simply press MS for bevel, and I can drag this a bit and give it just a slight bevel. And now I can grab these new polygons. So if you press UL on your keyboard, this will now enable you to select polygon loops. So I will delete this loop, and also this loop, and also this loop. Alright, so now we have successfully disconnected our object, and this will really help create that sort of futuristic look. Alright, and I just want to weld these points together, so I can select both of these points, press MQ, and then just select the point where I want them to weld. So MQ and weld them back together. Alright, and now let's take care of these lines here in the middle, so the neon lights. And I will use sort of like the same technique. I will select all of these edges on the side, like so. And before I bevel these edges, I want to use this edge selection and convert it into an editable spline that I can later use to actually generate the object that will play as the neon light. So what I mean by this is, while having all of these edges selected, I can press Shift C on my keyboard, and I will type here edge to spline, and double click this. So now you can see I have successfully created a spline based off of the edge selection. Alright, and let's actually unite this. So I will just make sure that everything is welded together. So select your edges, MQ, and just make sure that everything is welded together. And I can actually just get rid of some of these points over here. Alright, so the spline looks fine, and let's drop this back into place. And going back inside my mesh, going back to my edges, now I can bevel these edges and create sort of like the space between the neon lights. So MS, and just sort of create this separation between the edges. And now I want all of these pieces that are disconnected to be their own separate mesh. So if I press UF inside my polygon mode, you can see I can select each piece individually. So I will select this piece first and press UP. And now you can see, or actually first let's place the spline above the disk. So I only want to work with the disk object. And now if I press UP, this will split our mesh, and you can see now that the piece is a separate mesh. So going back inside my original mesh, I can now delete this piece and do the same for the rest of these. So UP, delete, select, UP, delete, and we're only left with the one at the top. And make sure you optimize your points. And now I have separate individual meshes for all of these pieces. All right. And let's actually create some extrusions now. So I will select my first piece and I will switch to edges and press UQ, and this will be the outline selection. And you can see now I can select the border of the mesh, and with these edges selected I can hold Control and drag them down, and this will create a nice simple extrusion. And let's see for the other pieces. And I can see right here that I forgot actually about a separation. So I will separate these polygons as well. So I will grab this edge loop, press MS, and then just bevel this out. And do the same thing for this other side. Select the edges, MS, bevel, and then I can go ahead and delete these polygons in the middle. And the same thing for our other object. Alright, so now we have that nice separation. And let's separate these polygons as well. So UF, select, UP to split, and then delete. And optimize this. And let's see the other mesh. UF, select, delete. Oh, actually UP to split, and then I can delete. And now we have successfully separated the pieces. So let's go back to extrusion and let's select the new mesh. So we'll do the same thing, select the mesh, go to your edge mode, press UQ for outline selection, select the outline edges and just drag them down. And let's do the same for this mesh. So edge mode, outline selection, and drag this down. And let's see for the rest of the mesh. And now for this piece in the middle, I want to select only these edges first. And I will extrude them on the X and Z plane. So you can see how this looks inside the object. So this is how the extrusion will look. And now I can grab these bottom edges. And I will extrude these downwards like so. Right? So if I solo this, now you can see this is how the extruded object will look. And I will do the same for this guy as well. So select the top edges and the side ones. And I will extrude it this way first. And then I can grab the bottom ones and extrude them down below. So for some reason there's a beveled edge over here. And I will just solo this for now and just get rid of this bevel. So I'm just welding the edges back. Alright, and what I want to do with this is actually select this bottom loop, drag this a bit down below, and I want to bridge this edge to this edge. So the hotkey for bridge is B, and bridge over this guy, and now select the bottom part, the bottom loop, and I can just drag this down below. And now I think we're pretty much done with the extrusions. And let's go ahead and use this spline to create our neon light. So I will add a new rectangle. I will place the rectangle inside the group, and I will place this rectangle inside a sweep object. And now I will place this neon spline below our rectangle inside the sweep. And while having the rectangle selected, I will scale this down. And you can see I'm really easily creating this mesh that will be used as a light. And I can grab this neon spline and just drag it down below and sort of in between the spaces of the geometry. So something like this. And I want to solo this neon spline for a second, and I want to get rid of this point here because I don't need it. And if I unsolo this now, and I can drag this over and sort of try to match it between the geometry. Alright, so far so good. Let's go ahead and add a disk. And I will use this disk as sort of like the floor for our holes over here. And let's go ahead and grab a tube and increase the inner radius and the outer radius to sort of fit right outside of our object, and increase the height for this. And I will decrease the inner radius a bit, and you can see we're sort of creating this hole from our reference, so this guy over here. And I will actually grab this disk and place it down below, and grab this object and grab the bottom edges and just drag it down below so it intersects with our disk. Alright, and let's go back inside, let's go back to our tube and decrease the radius maybe. And I know I need a lot more segments to create a smooth rounding, so I will multiply this value by 4, create 144 segments, and let's enable fillet for this. Let's use 3 segments and maybe a radius of 1, and I think this is fine. Let's also use this tube to create another one that will sort of be outside of our main object, so maybe something like this. Alright, and the cool thing you can do is actually in my main group object, so this will be my main object. If I go ahead and hold shift and select the Bevel Deformer, this will add the Bevel Deformer to the whole group, so the whole object. And let's see how we can use this Bevel Deformer. Use angle check, decrease threshold maybe to 10 degrees, and maybe offset of 0.4. So offset will determine how much intensity the bevel will have. So maybe 0.2 should be fine, and just give it maybe 4 subdivisions. And if I press NA, and this will be our smooth shading, you can kind of see we're creating these nice rounded edges that are capable of sort of catching highlights and creating a polished look, so to say. And I can see there's another edge here which I don't really want, so let's take a look inside our meshes, and I will solo this. And you can see I don't need this polygon over here because this will be mirrored over, and this will sort of fuck up the welding. So unsolo this, and now you can see there's no edge. And do the same maybe for or actually I might actually even leave this guy, because I kind of like this separation here in the middle. But let me just solo this and grab these edges and just move it slightly outside a bit, just so we have more of a disconnection effect. So something like this. Alright, and this looks fine. Let's go ahead and add a few more elements. So let's go ahead and add a sort of like a ring element to this tube, and I can do this by using an arc segment, and I will flip this to the side, and let's scale this up, place it above my tube object, and let's switch the type to maybe ring, and let's decrease the inner radius a bit. And I will use an angle of 10 degrees, and maybe increase or decrease the angle of the adaptive points, just so we have a more refined shape. And I will place this inside an extrude object, and let's place this down below a bit, And I can also place this inside a new null, so Alt G to group this. And I will do the same thing. I will hold Shift and select bevel and go to extrude and make sure create single object is selected. And then in our bevel deformer we can do the same options and maybe switch set the offset to 0.5 and just increase the subdivision, and this will give us a nice rounded bevel and just overall give it a nicer look. And now I can select this object and place it inside a cloner. I will set the cloner to be radial, set the plane to be, XY should be fine, radius of 0 and increase the count to 36 just so it fills in all of the gaps, so 36, and this will look fine. And I will actually copy this cloner now and scale this down, and I will use the same element for sort of like a border around the center part over here. So I'm just scaling this down, and let's edit the arc a bit. Let's increase or rather decrease the inner radius and sort of try to match it with our geometry. And I can actually, I will set this to be an angle of 20 degrees, and then I will split this value in two just so it fills properly. And for my bevel deformer I also will set this to be maybe an offset of 0.2 just so it's more noticeable with the bevels. Now let's create this the opening door in the center that will give that nice volumetric effect. So I will actually just grab this cloner and duplicate this again and place this below. And let's go inside our arc object, and you can see now if I decrease the inner radius and set this to 0, it sort of fills in the entire hole. And I will also decrease the original radius a bit just so it fits properly. And now I can simply animate this inner radius. So I will go to frame 5, set the keyframe for 0, maybe go to frame 30, and let's use the same value as the radius, so maybe 47, and set another keyframe. And as you can see now, and this will take care of the animation. Only one thing left to do here is add a random effector and make sure our random effector is inside this cloner. So we'll place it inside the cloner. Back to our random effector, let's turn off position and just increase the time offset. And you can see as I increase the time offset, we are offsetting the animation of all of the pieces, and it's creating sort of like this nice organic effect. And we can see we have some flickering over here, and this is probably because of the bevel deformer. And I will just turn this off, and I will go inside the extrude object and just use the fillet caps for the extrude object. So let's set this to a radius of 0.2 for both start and end, and increase the steps maybe to 5. And now we essentially created the same bevel look, but it shouldn't be flickering and all buggy. And I think this is fine actually. Let's go ahead and set up our materials, our light and our camera, and then we can start rendering. And let's actually add another tube object. I will duplicate this tube on the outside, and I will set this inner radius in a bit and the outer radius, and create sort of like a border for this other tube over here. Just place it down below. Alright, then let's get started with the materials. So as far as materials go, I'm not gonna use anything really advanced, just basic Cinema 4D materials. So when it comes to metal materials, there's not really a whole lot you can do unless you're using scratched surfaces or other deformed sort of metals. But I'm just gonna go for a nice clean brushed metal look. So let's get started with our first material. So double click to create a new material. And let's set this color to be something a little darker, and inside reflectance I will disable specular, and I will add a new Beckham layer, and I don't need any specular strength for this. And maybe in my layer mask I will set the texture to be Frontal, and I will decrease the amount for these values a bit. So the more I decrease this mix strength, the more reflective it will be, and the more I increase it, the less reflective it will be towards the center. So maybe this will work for now, and I already know I want to use some roughness for this. So I will use a value of 5% for now. And this will be my main material that I will use for my main object. So I will place this material on my symmetry object, and this should be fine for now. And I can simply duplicate this material now by holding Control and moving it to the side. And this will be my secondary, and maybe use less reflectance, less reflection for this. I will set the reflection strength to 50%, maybe increase the color a bit, the brightness, and I will place this on top of this cloner ring. So this guy, and maybe also the one in the center, so that guy as well. And let's create a new material for this guy that reveals our light. So duplicate this material again. Let's name this third, and maybe make this darker and increase the reflections. Go to my layer mask and maybe decrease the mix strength just so it's more reflective. And I will place this on top of my cloner, and this should be fine. And actually I will drag this up a bit just so it covers the neon lights over to the side. And now I'm realizing I actually forgot to model the actual neon lights, so these guys over here, and this is very easy, so let's take care of this. So I can use the actual mesh to generate this light. So for this mesh, for example, if I select these polygons in the center, and I will disable the Bevel Deformer for now. So with these polygons selected, I can press UP to create a new object. And now I can sort of use my cut tool to sort of create our light. So I will make an edge loop over here, maybe one over here, and maybe one over here. So I'm left now with these polygons, and I can press V, select, invert, get rid of the outer polygons, make sure this is optimized, select these polygons again, and if I press MT and then just drag it on my screen, you can see this is creating an extrusion, and I can get rid of this polygon right here where the welding occurs, and go back inside my scene, and I can just go ahead and add the neon light material to this, just so it's better, just so it's easier to visualize. And I also want to, actually let's enable our bevel, and this is fine for this light. You can go ahead and actually create a more interesting effect if you grab some edges, and maybe if I grab this edge on the corner here and press MS, you can kind of see I'm sort of creating a more interesting look, and this just adds a little bit more detail and makes it more interesting to look at. Alright, so I need to do the same thing for this part over here. So grab this mesh, select these polygons, UP to split, grab this new object, and let's disable Bevel Deformer for now. And I will create an edge loop maybe over here, and maybe another edge loop here. And then I can use these polygons, invert, get rid of the other polygons, select these polygons again, and do the same thing. Just extrude it outwards by holding Control and moving it. And I can then grab this edge and just bevel this out. And if I add my neon material to this, you can see we really easily created some lights. And maybe I can place this object maybe more below. And then if I turn on Bevel Deformer, everything should be fine. Alright, so really easily we can create some lights by using our original geometry. And now we can go back to materials, and let's create a material for this tube over here. So I will duplicate this, and this will be my fourth material. I will add it to my tube, and let's see how this looks. And I think the color is fine, and then the intensity. And one thing I can do here is I'll just go ahead and add a sort of like nice texture to this. So I can go ahead and go inside my bump, turn it on, and for texture I want to use surfaces, tiles. Alright, and for tiles I will choose circles, and make sure that all tiles color are the same, and which will be white. And now you can see how the material looks. And one problem here is that the mapping is not correct. So inside my material slot, I can go to projection and I will switch this to a cubic projection and maybe increase the tiles to a 3x3, which will make it smaller. And you can see how easily we've created this nice pattern for our object. Alright, then let's take care of the remaining objects. So I will make a new material, and this will be a simple material with just a base dark color with no reflectance. And I will place this for our floor, just because I don't really need any reflections or anything going on over here. Alright, and let's make our final material for these tube objects that remained. So duplicate the material, and this will be fifth. Place this on our remaining tubes, and I will make this brighter. And this should be fine. Maybe just check out the reflectance. Should be alright, I think. Maybe make this less reflective. Alright, and let's set up our other elements. So I will be using a sky object to create the reflections for the metal. And I will make a new material, and I will use a Studio HDRI image. So turn on only the luminance channel, and for my texture I will use a Studio, let's see, use this one, and I will include this one in the download link for the project files, so you can use it as well, and place this on top of my sky object. And now you can see this will be our environment that will be reflected on our metal. But I don't need to see the sky object, so right click, go to Cinema 4D tags and compositing, and disable scene by camera. Alright, and now if I make a quick test render. Alright, so not bad. Obviously this is a bit too bright, and I can fix this by adding a light. And I want to place this light somewhere at the top, and in my light options I can go to details and switch the fall off to inverse square. Maybe increase the radius of this and decrease maybe the intensity a bit. And let's go inside my material for my HDRI, and here I can make this sort of less bright, drop down the exposure a bit, and sort of kill these intense white colors. So maybe something like this. And if I test render this now, alright, so slightly better. Of course we will be using a physical renderer for this, so Ctrl B, and I will switch this to physical. Go inside my physical options, and let's set the sampling subdivisions, sampling quality to medium, and also right click and add ambient occlusion to this, and this will work wonders with our edges. And I want to create a few more lights for our for the sides of our objects, so I can go ahead and add a new light and place this inside a cloner. Switch the cloner to radial and increase the radius. Switch the plane to be X and Z, and maybe increase the count to 6. And you can see sort of the effect we're getting with this lighting. And I can decrease the intensity for this light. So you can see I'm just sort of trying to illuminate some of the sides over here. And let's make a test render now and see where we're at. Alright, so not bad. I'm actually gonna go ahead and jump inside my main material, and I want to decrease maybe the mix strength over here. So I want a little more reflectivity to come towards the center of our object. Maybe something like this. And let's make a new render. And while we're at it, I also want to go inside my main light, so this guy at the top, and switch the shadows to area, and I will turn this light over to the side and maybe increase its scale. So the more this square the light has is larger, the softer the shadows will be. Maybe decrease the fall off, so we get something like this. And let's create a new test render. Alright, so not bad. I'm actually gonna brighten up this base color for the floor over here. So let's stop this and go to my base color. And I'm just gonna brighten this up a bit. And now this should be fine, and we're ready for our final render. Just one more thing we have to do is animate our camera. So to do this, I will start off by adding a circle spline to the scene, and I will flip this horizontally and increase the scale for this guy, and let's drop a target camera into the scene. Let's set the camera to be somewhere around where the logo would be, and I'm actually just gonna add a cube to the scene, and this will play out as sort of my logo. It will be a lot easier to visualize it and trying to reference your logo or text or whatever you might have. Alright, so just imagine, just think of this cube as the logo. And let's set the camera target to be right in the center of, or actually the camera target will start at the center of this hole where the light will be. And maybe this logo will be a little bit higher. So for the camera, I will add a Cinema 4D align tag, so align to spline. And for my spline, I will use the circle. And now you can see this circle will be what we will use as an orbiting tool for our camera. I'm actually going to be using the circle options, so the rotation of the circle instead of the position value for the spline tag, just because this position value only works from 0 to 100, so your camera might be stuck in this position, and it's just a lot easier to just animate the actual rotation of the circle spline. Alright, so let's take care of our starting point. Our animation will be actually 180 frames long, so I will set the viewport to be 180 frames. And I can see now that maybe this hole is opening up too fast, so maybe I can go to my arc settings and just create more space between the keyframes, just so the animation is a little slower. And I will also go inside my random effector, and for my time offset I will also increase this value a bit, just so it's more variation between the pieces. And let's go back to editing our camera. So the starting point for our camera will be somewhere up below. So I will drag this circle up, and let's go back to our frame 0, and I will also decrease the radius for this. So I wanted more of a I wanted to have more of a frontal angle with the object. And let's go inside our camera and set the field of view to be 85 degrees, and this will create a more cinematic and more motion designy kind of look. Alright, so it's very important that you take care of your field of view, so you set the value before you actually start animating the camera. So now I will grab this circle object. So I will set a keyframe for the Y value for this circle over here, and move it to frame 50 maybe. And this is where the logo will sort of start to appear. Set another keyframe for the camera around this height, and this should be fine for now. Let's actually go inside the object and set another keyframe for radius. Move over to frame 50 and increase the radius, maybe to something like this. Set another keyframe, and let's take a look at the animation. So this is how the camera will sort of look. And let's set another keyframe for rotation as well. Make a keyframe, go to frame 50, and I will just turn this over maybe to the side. And let's go back in my original frame, and let's set the starting rotation maybe on the other side, so we get something like this. Alright, not bad. And also I will need to animate the Y position of the camera target. So going back to frame 0, set another keyframe, go to frame 50 and raise this value up until the camera target is right in the center of where the logo will be. Alright, and if I set a keyframe now, this will be our animation, and if we take a look inside the camera view, this is the animation that we get. Alright, not bad actually, really not bad. Let's go back outside of my camera view and let's set another keyframe for rotation at the last frame, so 180. Let's rotate the camera around, maybe over to this side. So this will be our ending frame, and let's go, let's set another keyframe for the Y value as well at frame 180. So I will also lower this now. And let's take a look inside the camera view. Alright, that's actually not bad. Maybe I can even increase the radius even more. Or actually, I will stay inside the camera view and I will edit my last frame through here. So maybe I want this to go a little lower. And the camera target should be fine. I will go to my camera and increase the banking for this. So if I add a slight rotation, maybe 5 degrees, you can see this creates a more dynamic angle. Alright, so everything's looking fine so far. I'm actually gonna go ahead and maybe lower the camera target a bit, just so the logo is more even out with the actual object below it. So I think something like this should be fine. So let's make a few more adjustments. Let's go inside my circle, and I actually want this to start a little more from above. So I will increase the Y value for my first frame, my first keyframe at frame 0. Alright, so this looks a little better, and let's preview this. Alright, so not bad. Maybe this logo will be slightly more turned around at this part. And I think this will be our final animation. And let's hop outside the camera view. And one final thing I want to add is I want to do the same sort of like this texture for our light. So I'll go ahead inside my light, go to Reflectance and add some reflectivity to this. So add a normal layer of Beckham, go to my layer mask, switch to Frontal and adjust the values a bit. Maybe give it some roughness, some blurriness. And this should be fine. So give it some nice reflection, and inside my bump channel I can go to effects. Let's go to actually to surfaces, tiles, and let's actually hop inside this guy, and I will just copy this texture channel, copy it over here, so paste. Alright, and you can see we have the same mapping problem, so I have to go inside all of these objects and make sure they're mapped properly. So I will select all of these light materials, and I can just go to cubic and set the tiles and U and V to be 5 by 5, and you can see now very easily we have added a nice texture to our light. Alright, so let's go back in our camera, and I won't be needing this cube for now, so I'll just make this invisible in the viewport and the rendering, and I can go ahead and set up our render settings and make our final render. So if you press Ctrl B, make sure your ambient occlusion is turned on. Inside your physical renderer settings, you can set the sampling quality to medium and it should be fine. And I won't be using any multipass for this because I will be exporting the passes that we need individually directly inside from Cinema 4D, which I'll be covering in the next tutorial. And for my save options, I can just use a normal PNG. Definitely make sure alpha channel is turned on and straight alpha. And I will set the depth to 16-bit channel, and I will go ahead and make a new folder for this. And now with my output settings, make sure that all frames is selected, and you can go ahead and press Shift R to render your whole sequence. But that's it for the first part of this tutorial, which covered modeling. In the next part we will jump inside After Effects and see how we can add a logo, add some HUD elements, and just go over some general compositing techniques. So be on the lookout for that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next part.